some are now speculating, given that reports have come out that AC Milan is interested in Isco, that it could be regarding that transfer. And so Pintus specifically said Isco's name and something in relation to like a transfer, or is it done, or something like that. So what would be your take on Isco going to AC Milan, and like what do you think would be an acceptable fee if that ever actually did happen?
So I'm actually writing about this right now, in my column. There's a huge section of Isco. I'm basically going through and writing about everyone in the squad and what's the likely destination, what's going to happen and stuff. So I don't want to spoil it too much, but I actually think if he's to go anywhere, Milan makes the most sense. Because I think Isco's in a situation now that if you look around the big clubs around Europe, there's no reason for them to even take a gamble on Isco. Like, that makes no sense. Because if you look at all the big teams in Europe who have the money that could sign somebody like Isco, let's say, and by the way, he's not going to be signed. You're not going to get much money for Isco, I'm sorry to say. So you're just basically looking to someone to get him off your books for the last year of his contract and just get a little something for him before his contract expires next summer. That's kind of the way, that's the deal right now. If you look at all the big clubs in Europe, there's just way too many world-class attacking midfield options and younger and more dynamic and more fluid. Like, I'm talking about like the Mason Mounts of the world. I'm talking about like anyone at Manchester City can play the attacking role and shift in and out of the central midfielder and winger positions. They have so many of those players. Even teams like PSG, and like there's so many big teams around. If you go down the list, that they just, why take a gamble on Isco when you have so many good young talented players you could just allocate those minutes to? There's no point. But Milan is that like nice kind of threshold of like just below the elite group of teams that like they're in that tier that I think is like the Goldilocks zone of like not too small, not too big, but could actually use him, especially with Çalhanoğlu, who's gone to Inter now. They're actually looking for somebody that could take that role. And, obviously they probably have Brahim coming back, but they still need to replace Çalhanoğlu. And there's a few names there like that. The other thing is like, I wouldn't bank on it necessarily because I think, first of all, I think Real Madrid will try to get rid of Isco. And maybe that's a harsh way of saying it, but they'll try to sell Isco because they need to trim down the roster and they want to basically anything that'll get them one step closer to shedding salary, trimming the roster, and making some room financially for a superstar. They'll do it. And I think Isco is among, and if you look at the midfield options, Matt, everyone from Odegaard to Fede to Modric to Cruz. Ancelotti also really likes Antonio Blanco, so maybe he's going to be in the squad next season. It's a lot of players, and Isco is in that group, but he's probably the most expendable. He almost certainly is the most expendable of that group, so he's the most logical one to sell. I think the only barrier with AC Milan is I think they have a little bit of leverage to say. First of all, there's a lot of leverage to negotiate with Real Madrid at this point. The other thing is that they are linked with Coutinho, who Barcelona are going to discount tremendously. We're talking about like 99% off Coutinho at this point. They're looking at Dusan Tadic, who's fantastic at Ajax, a little bit older, but a proven European player who's a really good creator. We're talking about, they're in talks with Sabitzer, Marcel Sabitzer. They've also kicked the tires around James Rodriguez, according to some reports, which is a bit ironic if he's the one they choose over Isco. But I don't see him moving from Everton. But so I think they have some leverage on it. But sorry to make this such a long-winded answer, Matt, but I do think Isco to Milan actually does make sense for both parties.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if Brahim does end up there as well, it's well known that they're both buddies, especially both being from Malaga. So
that's true. And we have a good relationship with Milan.
Yeah. But apparently the Brahim deal, although it seems like it's done and dusted, it may not be 100% done because he's obviously still there with the team. And Oz is saying that it was never 100% done until he actually met with Carlo Ancelotti and Carlo had a chance to see him. And if Brahim does convince him, then there could be a chance that he stays. So, not 100% done there. Maybe Isco's just kind of like another option for them. if we do somehow end up keeping Brahim. But I'll be surprised if he doesn't end up at AC Milan.
Me too. And I don't think it's a matter of Real Madrid not valuing him. Um, I think it's more a matter of, and I spoke about this with Lucas last Tuesday. I think it's more a matter of it's hard to jiggle room for him right now because Bale's coming back. So even though Bale's future is kind of in limbo, it's if he's back in the squad next season, it's really hard to kind of make room for Brahim. But if you take him out on loan one more year, then you buy yourself one more time for Bale's contract to run out. The only tricky thing is if Milan have that buyback option, and then Real Madrid also have their own buyback option too, which is it's just this. It's weird that they have it structured like that. That Milan reportedly have and this is reported by Fabrizio Romano. So it's weird that it's the way that it's reported is that Milan would have a buyback or a buy option at the end, and Real Madrid would have a buyback clause also, like the way they triggered with Carvajal and Leverkusen those days.